For some of you who don't know, I'm Sharon Davey. I'm director of the Maxine, Platzer, Lynn Women's Center at the University of Virginia. And I'm very pleased to be able to welcome you tonight to the Zintl Leadership Award celebration. As most of you know, the award was established in Elizabeth Zintl's name and in her memory a year after she died at a very young age. So since 1998, we have honored each year a woman at the university for her outstanding leadership and her service that has made a difference in a way that mirrors Elizabeth's own. In the broadest context, the Zintl Leadership Award speaks to the deeply important role of women's leadership. And it reminds us, as we see each year, the new Zintl awardee, that leadership takes very many different forms. The Zintl Award reminds us, too, that women as a whole have had and continue to have an enormous influence in shaping this university. This is the 16th year that the award has been presented, and it's the Center's 25th anniversary. So we have a new name, thanks to the generosity of Maxine Platzer Lynn, who came to this university at 17 years old and graduated in 1951. She has some interesting stories to tell. And she is a woman who understands that the work of all of us needs support beyond what the university can provide to ensure sustainability, to maintain excellence, and for me, most important, to keep that crucial flexibility to meet new opportunities and new needs, or to meet needs that have always been here but are more evident today than they ever have been before. So today, with a nod to the Center's 25th anniversary, its history and its present, I want to do something a little different than has happened in our past ceremonies. So, try to think of the university without them, as I call the names of the Zintl Leadership Award recipients and ask them to stand one by one, who received this award from 1998 to 2014. Or if they have left through retirement, or they have gone elsewhere, or in one heartbreaking case, an early death, think of how much we miss them. And please hold your applause until all of them are standing. Patricia Lampkin, Sylvia Terry, Dr. Sharon Hostler, Claire Kronmiller, yay, Shirley Miniker, who is not with us today, Louise Dudley, Marva Barnett, Patricia Werhane, Karen Wittenborg, Dr. Karen Ruban, Shamim Sasson, Carolyn Callahan, Yvonne Hubbard, Marcia Childress, Karen Van Lingen, Carol Wood, who came a long way to get here, Anda Webb, thank you, Anda, Meredith Wu, and in 2014, of course, Jane Miller. Thank you. As always, I want to thank the Zintl Nominating Committee, and I would ask them to stand. They have the, if you will, all of you who are members of that committee will stand. Colette, Barbara, Shamim, Marcia, several others who couldn't make it tonight. They have both a difficult and a joyful task, which is to look at the nominations that come in, and all of these packets are nominating amazing women, and to choose for this year who will receive the award. We come now to Jane, and this year, on behalf of the university, as you know, she will receive the Elizabeth Zintl Leadership Award. She is Senior Associate Athletics Director for Programs, and many of you know her, and if you don't, tonight's a chance to walk right up to her. Often behind the scenes, Jane has been a powerhouse for gender equity for a long time at this university. For me, she's simply the outstanding leader in making Title IX come alive in UVA sports. Craig Littlepage, her colleague, will tell you more about Jane in a minute, but I want to share one memory. The first time I met Jane was across a scarred wooden conference table in a small kind of dim classroom in the basement of Cabell Hall. We were at a meeting of a small committee, the Committee on Women in Sports, of the 1988 Presidential Task Force on the Status of Women at UVA. So we asked this committee, all of us, we asked Jane about the situation of women in sports at the University of Virginia. Was there equity in sports? I asked, ignorant English department waif that I was. Was there anything missing? Well, yes. Without diminishing what was good, wonderful about UVA athletics, without in any way ignoring the brilliance and compassion of her colleagues. On that day in 1988, Jane was forthright about what was missing. For instance, uniforms for women athletes. In a number of sports, they just had to put together their own. Or transportation to games. They often piled into cars, even for away games. And most important to Jane, of course, there was not enough practice time on good playing fields for the young women who had come to UVA to be their best, both on and off the field. Jane was central in changing that. Fortunately, she had colleagues like Craig Littlepage, who stood tall, pun intended, beside her. And with her colleagues, she worked, Craig and Jane worked together with others to change that situation. The situation that was really giving a message to young women who came here in sports, so that the message that they get now is something very, very different. I'll turn now to Craig, who is Director of Intercollegiate Athletics at the University of Virginia. And I'm not going to give you an introduction, but I just want to offer my heartfelt gratitude to Craig for his commitment to students, his support and respect for women, and his deep integrity. Thank you.
Good afternoon, and thank you, Sharon, for the opportunity to be a part of this very, very special program for not only me personally, but for the Department of Athletics generally. We love and respect everything that Jane does for our program and the way in which she represents us and also represents the university. And also thank you to the Women's Center for putting on this outstanding event every year, and to have somebody that's so significant in our program to be honored by the selection for the Zintl Award is very humbling for all of us. So thank you to the Women's Center. The Zintl Award recognizes the, quote, high degree of professionalism, creativity, and commitment that characterize Zintl's significant contributions to the university. And as I think about everything that Jane Miller represents, everything that she's done, and the interactions that we've had over several decades now, she is a perfect candidate for this position. 31 years, that's a long time. Some of you may remember back then that gasoline was $1.24 a gallon. Michael Jackson's Thriller album hit #1 on the charts. The Dow Jones broke the 1,100 mark for the first time in its history. So we've come a long way in those 31 years. But when we measure one's influence or greatness, I ask myself the question, what is it that we look at? And I'm going to attempt to put into context Jane's impact. Again, I started with the reference to 31 years. And if you look at your program, you'll see that in her 31 years, she's done all kinds of great things. But I think in general, she's really exemplified the best qualities of intercollegiate athletics. She's a team player in every sense of the word. She is one that believes in collaboration and teamwork. She's dedicated. She's certainly passionate about everything that she does. She's selfless, and she is, as the Zintl Award requires, professional in everything that she does. So those are just a few of the qualities that she brings to the university and that she aligns with the Zintl Award. As you know, in reading the program, she was a very outstanding coach. First as the field hockey coach, where she guided the Cavaliers to 3 NCAA appearances in her 8 years, and then as our lacrosse coach, she led the Cavaliers to 2 national championships and 8 NCAA appearances. So, as both a coach and as an administrator, I would consider Jane to be kind of the poster child of the leader, teacher, coach that I think is so very badly needed in intercollegiate athletics. She's been a role model and a valued mentor to generations of our student athletes, coaches, and aspiring administrators. And symbolic of that sort of role that she's played, back in 2013, the Virginia Athletics Foundation announced the creation of the Jane Miller Endowed Scholarship, which was largely funded by former athletes, colleagues and friends and alums of the University of Virginia. And then recently she was named the 2014 Administrator of the Year by the National Association of Collegiate Women's Athletics Administrators, NACWA, a very, very prominent association, organization in intercollegiate athletics. She selflessly served the University of Virginia, the Atlantic Coast Conference, and the NCAA throughout her outstanding career. And it's important to note that in all the activities in which Jane has been involved, she hasn't stopped at being a participant. She's truly a contributor. And I think that there's a big difference. Some people will sit at the table and take notes. Other people will lead the discussion and move toward change and doing all the things that are necessary that we can maximize the opportunities that we provide to student athletes across the country. So if you, again, reference the program, you'll see the range of activities and committees, first at the university, calendar committee, undergraduate admissions committee, judicial review committee, from the standpoint of the ACC, again, where she's been a leader, the women's basketball committee, she's been the chair of both the men's and women's lacrosse committee, and then as well she's been a participant and contributor for the ACC's equity committee. And then in terms of her national service, she's been involved heavily in the women's lacrosse committee. She's chaired both the she's been the chair of the Championship Sports and Management Cabinet for the NCAA, and also she's chaired the National Lacrosse Hall of Fame Committee. So she's had just a wealth of different experiences and has been somebody that has served the association, the Atlantic Coast Conference, and the University of Virginia very well. This athletics department has been blessed with some of the most outstanding figures in intercollegiate sport. Names like Gene Corrigan, Dick Schultz, Debbie Ryan, George Welsh, Terry Holland, Bruce Arena, Hall of Fame administrators, Hall of Fame coaches, more recently outstanding coaches like Brian O'Connor, Tony Bennett, Brian Boland, Kim Llewellyn, Joanne Boyle. I could go on and on and on. These are all people that have helped to continue the ascension of our athletics program. But truth be known that among our best is Jane Miller. among our best is Jane Miller. In 1991, I'd at that time been 2 years into my administrative career, and I was called by then Athletics Director Jim Copeland to take on the task of reorganizing our administrative structure in the athletics department. And after a number of different discussions with people within the athletics department as well as people within the university administration, the first recommendation that I made to Jim Copeland was we have to figure out a way of convincing Jane to join us on the administrative team. And so we reached out to Jane, made her an offer that she couldn't refuse, but it was with a caveat, and that caveat was that she would give up the dual coaching responsibilities. She would relinquish the coaching reins in field hockey, and she would continue in coaching our women's lacrosse team, but she would stick her toe in the water in terms of the administrative work. So she took over as a part-time assistant athletics director. But we allowed her to retain the coaching duties, and she held on to the coaching duties with the women's lacrosse team until 1995. And then in 1995, Jane retired from coaching. She finally got the full bug for administrative work, and we've all benefited by her decision and certainly her work. I'm going to digress just for a minute. I'm going to tell one of my favorite Jane Miller stories, and she's heard it time and time again. Maybe some of you have heard it as well. But one of my recollections of Jane goes back to an NCAA tournament game at College Park, Maryland. If you know Jane, she is very clothes conscious, C-L-O-T-H-E-S, clothes conscious. And she needs to be impeccably dressed. And some events require an early morning shopping trip to get the wardrobe completely coordinated. So Jane had apparently gone out on this particular day, a bright sunny day, middle of May in College Park, Maryland, and one of the parts of her apparel was a brilliant white top. And she was going to be on the sidelines that day as our administrator handling the men's lacrosse game at the University of Maryland. And before the game, she's a bundle of energy, and she's running around and doing this and doing that and handing credentials and tickets and hello to this person, hello to that person. And again, very, very conscious of her attire and so forth. And just as the teams are getting ready to come out for the start of the game, as Jane is standing there in front of the stands, this young boy that happened to be on the sidelines steps on a mustard pack, which explodes, and that brilliant white shirt that Jane had all of a sudden was speckled with mustard. You can imagine, for somebody as conscious of her appearance, this was a devastating experience for Jane. But needless to say, she was able to weather that, and she didn't miss a beat. But that's one of my fond recollections of Jane. Anyway, as I conclude, it was Martin Luther King that said, everyone can be great because everyone can serve. Everyone can be great because everyone can serve. And it was Jim McBride and I were standing in the back, and he made mention of the word great in connection with Jane, his interactions with Jane, and so forth. So today, because of her sound judgment, strength of character, for making a difference in the lives of so many different people, not only their lives but their careers, for inspiring the dreams of student athletes, coaches, and young administrators, and for the breadth and quality of her work and service locally, regionally, and nationally. This afternoon we celebrate the contributions of someone I think is great in her own right, a colleague, a friend, a university community spirit, the 2014 Elizabeth Zintl Award winner, Jane Miller. Jane?
Thank you, Sharon and Craig. And I guess I have to digress and tell the Craig story. Craig was at dinner at some event with President Castine one time. And he was sitting next to President Castine. And throughout the dinner, I guess Craig, as he was eating, he would take his napkin and wipe his mouth. And the evening went on until finally the last time he did it, he realized that he had been using his tie the whole time. And those are the stories we can tell. But I want to thank the Women's Center and the Zintl Committee for selecting me for this award. And I also want to thank my nominators. I am so grateful for the kind words that people said on my behalf, and I am really honored that you considered me for this, worthy of this nomination and this award. But I also want to take the opportunity to thank Sharon and her staff for the wonderful work that you do on a day-to-day basis. You support the university, both men and women alike, and your work is important, and you have improved the lives of individuals as well as the university. So thank you so much. As Sharon went down the list of past recipients, it's amazing how many of those women I have had the good fortune to have as role models, mentors, and support systems. They really are amazing women. And I'm so fortunate, not only were they my friends, but I was able to learn from their experiences. While I didn't know Elizabeth Zintl, I did learn about her by coming to this event and hearing other people talk about her and what a wonderful person she was and how much she gave to this university. So receiving an award that's named by Elizabeth Zintl, named for Elizabeth Zintl, and it's already been given to that wonderful list of past recipients is something that I will absolutely always treasure. After my initial panic about having to speak today, something kept coming back to me, and it was something that our women's basketball coach, Joanne Boyle, always says, and Joanne's at the back of the room. And what she says is that everybody has a story to tell. So I'd like to share the short version of my story with you. And it's about the three families that encircle me: my immediate family, my athletic family, and my university family. We often hear from people about the words of wisdom that they learned from their parents. Well, my mom and dad shared their wisdom through their actions. My mom grew up in Dairy Farm in Massachusetts, and she was actually the first national champion in our family as a flutist in our high school band. She was the go-to person. She was the glue. She was the person who never said anything bad about anyone. She really was the sweetest person I've ever known. But she did know when and how to stand strong when it was really important. And that especially was true when it came to her children. I remember the day that I went home and I told my mom that my guidance counselor told me that I was not college material. Well, I was devastated, obviously, because I had plans, and they included college. But my mom didn't miss a beat, and the next day, absolutely the next day, I had a new guidance counselor. You know, admittedly, my academic interests and my athletic interests at that time did not match. But fortunately, Mom saw that there was more to me than just a jump shot. And I really wouldn't have had all the incredible experiences that I've had throughout my career if it wasn't for her belief in me and her strength of character. That's my mom. She was loving, smart, respectful, and strong. We lost her 20 years ago, much too early, but she has been and still is my hero. My dad, on the other hand, is a man of few words. He's a Bostonian, a diehard fan of the Boston Red Sox and the New England Patriots. Well, my dad used to help me with my taxes. It drove me crazy because they had to be to the exact penny. As my younger sister once wrote in an essay, Dad meticulously completes my taxes each year with attention to detail and always by the book. In fact, on one fact-finding mission to the IRS service, my dad asked such complicated questions that the IRS employee accused him of being a plant to test his knowledge. So that's my dad, John Miller. He doesn't have a middle name, it's just John Miller. According to him, it's a Scottish thing. Keep it simple. That's why, all except for my oldest sister, Pamela, we all only have 4 letters in our names, and we don't have middle names. So it's Jane, John, and Gail. My dad also counted every stroke in golf. How many of us do that? No mulligans, no preferred lies. And he always conducted himself in a dignified manner on the course. It would always amaze me that he could hit the absolute worst shot in the world and then calmly walk up to the ball as if it was the best shot he had ever made in his life. Because that is how the game of golf should be played. It should be played by the rules, and it is proper. I really wish I could have been with my brother and my mom in Scotland when my dad's name was picked from the lottery to play the old course at St. Andrews. My dad is a dignified man, a man of few words, doesn't show his emotions very often, but that day he had tears in his eyes because he was so happy that he had that opportunity. I would say that each day I do try to follow my parents' example, and sometimes I succeed and there are times that I don't. I wish those times didn't happen, but I don't. Within the last few weeks, my brother and my sisters and I have put my dad into an assisted living facility. And I think those of you who have gone through that can understand what the stress of that all is. But the silver lining in all of it was the time that I was able to spend with my siblings. I remember specifically one day we were sitting around the kitchen table, and I don't know if you remember this, John, but we were talking about how we were going to help my dad through this really life-altering event. And I had what Oprah would call an aha moment. And it was just this wonderful feeling that came over me about the pride that I had about my siblings, my sisters and my brother, and what we had become. I really felt like we had become an incredible team with all of our strengths, and I hope we were a great reflection of my parents. John's here today, my brother John, I'm so happy. My retired younger brother, by the way. His wife Bev, and Deb are here representing my family. From a professional standpoint, I hit the jackpot. At every step in my career, the good Lord put people in front of me that inspired me, people who taught me, and people who encouraged me. From friends to teachers, to mentors, to colleagues, and to bosses. I have worked for and with some of the best people in our profession. People who value hard work, commitment, and relationships. People who do the right thing for the right reasons, even when it is difficult and unpopular. And Craig Littlepage is at the top of that list. I admire you, Craig, not only for your character, I admire you for your commitment to your family, your sincere interest in the welfare of people, your selfless acts of kindness, and for your commitment to this university and to our athletic department. As Sharon said, you stand tall in so many ways. And how fortunate am I to work with so many wonderful coaches. They are the best in the country. Not only are they talented, but they always strive for uncompromised excellence. We live in a very crazy world right now in athletics. If you read the sports pages and listen to the media, you'll understand that. But I can say that I sleep better at night knowing who I work with, and I am very, very fortunate. Finally, this university is the absolute perfect place for me. I had a fulfilling coaching career. I remember the thrills, I remember the highlights, but I think the thing that brings the most joy to me are the people, the players, the assistant coaches, my staff. And I'll tell you that when we get together, we don't talk really about what happened on the field. We don't talk about the wins and losses, we talk about the stories. And then as time goes along, we start to talk about the stories behind the stories, when they trust me a little bit more. As an introvert, it was a little bit frightening for me when I entered administration. Unlike today, when I see so many friendly faces out here, which is just incredible, and I thank you so much for being here. I didn't really know many people outside of the department. So I had also said I would never be an administrator. Suddenly, I was supervising my peers because I was still coaching, so I was supervising some of my peer coaches. And then I was working on a number of committees because I was the only woman who was really in the higher level of athletic administration. And then I was working with really brilliant people. But as I said earlier, there are a lot of people who helped me make this next transition in my life and in my career. And I did learn never to say never. As Craig often says, and I think we know in our athletics department, we have a very unique relationship with this university. It's based on trust, it's based on respect, it's based on inclusion, and it's based on the building of relationships that go far beyond the day-to-day business. We have had some tragic losses over the years. We're living right now through a very difficult time as we think about Hannah. But we've also had a lot of celebrations. And each time we've gone through one of these things, we have not done it alone. We've shared it with our university community. It's a relationship that our peers at other institutions absolutely admire and envy. They're actually jealous that we can have the kind of relationship from the athletics department that we do within the university. And again, I'd like to credit Craig for being the leader in getting us to that position. I know that the collective power of my three families has brought me today. My path could have gone in different directions if it weren't for the people in these families. They saved me sometimes, they shaped me, they tweaked me, and they challenged me to be at a place that I never really envisioned would be possible. And for that, I am so thankful and so grateful. I think if you take a minute and you look around the room, you are going to see people who are part of your story. And I really urge you to reflect on that story and to reflect on all the wonderful connections that we have while we celebrate the legacy of Elizabeth Zintl. Thank you so, so much.
So on behalf of the University of Virginia, of the Women's Center, and on all of those whose lives Jane has touched, I present to you, Jane, the Elizabeth Zintl Leadership Award. Thank you.